Welcome to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Hour number 2 of the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. Happy Saturday morning to all of you. Jonathan Von Tobel going to come up in 15 minutes. JVT's my guy. I'm a little worried about him, I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit nervous about what today will bring. But maybe he's just used to it as a Clipper fan and the pain he's put himself through over the years. I am fully, we had JVT on the program on Thursday night. And wasn't oozing with confidence that his Clippers would take care of business, but they did. They did. JVT were good, and now another Game 7 is here. Now, worth noting, Ty Lue 4-0 all time in Game 7s, and also worth noting, as Andy Lindahl let us know, it's not like the Nuggets are an unbeatable force at home for Game 7s. They lost last year in Game 7 at home. So JVT going to join us here coming up in a little bit to help us preview tonight, as well as look ahead to tomorrow as the Warriors unable to finish off the Houston Rockets. And, it's kind of a be careful what you wish for type of situation when you think back to Wednesday night where the Golden State Warriors down pretty significantly against the Houston Rockets and threw in the towel, so to speak. The backups, by the way, made that thing interesting. And when I was sitting here on primetime talking with Will Hill about that Wednesday night performance where the Houston Rockets ultimately needed to put their starters back in the game because it got a little too close for comfort. And I thought Ime Udoka kind of got hoodwinked a little bit by Steve Kerr by putting in the backups too soon and seeing that lead start to slip away. But I give a ton of credit to Houston. Golden State could not figure it out last night, couldn't get the shot going. And now we go back to Houston and the Rockets, who were a significant series dog, obviously down 3-1. Now they find themselves as the betting favorite heading into that game as a 3-point favorite on Sunday evening. So 2 Game 7s, also taking a look ahead to the 2 Eastern Conference semifinal matchups, which, based off of the odds, don't look particularly competitive, but we'll see if those series will be. I'll get to those here in just a moment. We're going to talk a little more hockey with Todd Furnman coming up bottom of the hour. Also a Game 7 tonight and a Game 7 tomorrow on the ice. And we just talked once again to Andy Lindahl, breaking it down for us from a Game 7 standpoint. And, I wanted to see if I could unearth it, if I could pull it out of Andy, whether or not we look at the first period under in this Game 7 tonight. And similarly, and we're going to go through, what the series prices have done for Clippers, Denver, Golden State, Houston from a total standpoint here in just a moment. But similarly, you're paying that tax, right? In the first period, the expectation, it's tight in that first period. But Andy kind of pointed this out. If Colorado wants to win this game, they got to avoid some of those mistakes like they had against the Dallas Stars, even in their 7-4 victory. Look, Colorado, a -155 favorite on the road against the Dallas Stars here today. And, this is a series that I think has been a bit confusing a little bit. Ooh, got to point this out. We got some over money hitting the market right now on the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. This total has climbed now 3 points this morning. So this thing opened up at 201 with the anticipation to be things are going to tighten up Game 7 under. Well, if you played under 201, you're not happy right now because the market has ticked all the way up to 204. So, looking ahead to tomorrow, we'll get you some more thoughts on Clippers Denver here in just a moment. But I think it's fascinating to see the market move this way this morning. And it clearly is a pushback on the tax that you're paying on a Game 7 under. So Game 1 of Golden State Houston, total was 213. Game goes under, right? That was a game in which the Houston Rockets came out and it was ugly. 95-85 was the final score. So it goes way under. You see an adjustment of 8 points to Game 2. Goes from 213, and I'm using closing lines, to 205. Game 2, Houston gets their zigzag. Once again, the zigzag, even though Houston able to win last night to disrupt the zigzag. 65.6% it is hitting. 21, 11, and 1 in the NBA playoffs so far this year. The team that loses wins and covers the next game. JVT has been all over that, and I saw Dave Tooley also tweet about it last night as well. But the zigzag came home in Game 2 at the Houston Rockets, 109-94, but another under. Game 3, we go to Golden State. We see no adjustment in the total from Game 2, 205. It goes under again, 104-93 the final score. So under. 3-0 to the under to start the series. Adjustment. 204 the total for Game 4. Over we go, 109-106. Game 5, 113-116, way over the total of 203, which was the lowest total of the series to date. And then we see the adjustment for last night back to 208, and it goes over again, 115-107. So it's been a run here on these totals, right? 3 unders, 3 overs, and now game 7, opens 201, and what has the market told us? It said that's an overreaction, and it's moving up. So now it sits at 204. So the overreaction to a Game 7, the tax, the market is disagreeing with it and has moved that total back to 3 points, back to where we were kind of in the middle portion of this series with 3 straight overs. So the feel is, at least from the betting market, that the market shouldn't have overreacted to a Game 7. Speaking of which, let's go to Denver and the Clippers. This series opens up with a very high total of 224.5. Remember how this all started, right? It was a lot of unders coming home in the start of the postseason. Game number 1 goes to overtime, 112-110 the final score, Game 1 in Denver. Still goes under the total of 224.5. So similarly to Golden State Houston, we saw a big adjustment. We go from 224.5 to 217.5 for Game 2 in Denver. What happens? Under again, 105-102. Another adjustment. So now, when you look at Game 3 versus Game 1, an adjustment of 11 points to the total. 213.5 the posted total, or the closing number for Game 3. What happened? Under again. 3 straight unders. Game 4, we go to 211.5. So we had moved 13 points from the closing number of Game 1 to the closing number of Game 4. Under again. 4-0 to the under to start the series. And then finally is when we saw the over finally hit. And that's the Jamal Murray performance that we saw in Game 5 at Denver, where Jamal Murray went off for 43 points. It was a tremendous shooting performance all night long from the Denver Nuggets in Game 5, our first over in the series. So a total of 210 for Game 5. Clippers, by the way, worth noting here. Game 5, the 131-115 win for the Denver Nuggets. Because of the zigzag, the belief was Game 5, off of the Game 4 loss at home, the Aaron Gordon dunk at the buzzer, you would get the zigzag there, you would get the Clippers victory. Obviously, that was not the case. One of the few times this postseason, the zigzag obviously has not come home. But thinking about this, Game 5 in Denver, Clippers were -2. Tonight, Nuggets are -1.5. Same lineup. Different result, obviously, a Game 5, but the Nuggets are the favorite when they were a dog just a couple days ago at home against the Los Angeles Clippers. Back to the total, 213 for Game 6. What happened there? We saw an over, 111-105. So totals in this series, 4-2 to the under, but the over has seen 2 straight games hit. And this one, when you look at the total there, it's also seen a little bit of resistance, right? This thing opened up at 204.5, and we've seen over money come in. So I'd be curious to see what JVT thinks ultimately about where we head. Going back to the opener at DraftKings, opened 209.5, blasted to the under, 204.5, and now we're getting that buyback here, sitting at 207. So got to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Is it a situation from an in-game standpoint that you look and wait and see how it's playing out here? I've got a pre-series play on the Clippers. I got them at plus 120. I know JVT, I think, got a better number. There was some really good numbers out there on the Clippers when this series price first initially popped. And now here we are in a Game 7. The Clippers, I think most of us could argue, the Clippers have wrapped this thing up, right? Should be sitting in a much more advantageous spot, but not the case. JVT going to join us here in just a little bit. But, hey, just a reminder, if you want to bet smarter, not louder, you got to check out the Sharp Plays at sharpplays.com, where the real bettors go to get ahead. Most of the betting world, it's just noise. Chasing steam, copying picks, recycling the same old, quote, value plays. They're not sharp. They're just parrots. The Sharp Plays is the source they're echoing. Since 2011, it's been locked in with what the real pros are betting. Elite groups, sharp money, the kind that actually moves the market. When the Sharp Plays jump on a side, the line reacts. So head on over to sharpplays.com. Respected, watched, feared. Once again, sharpplays.com. I want to get JVT's thoughts, too, on the Eastern Conference semifinals. Massive series prices out there on both the Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it feels like, and I don't want to say the overarching, but it feels like there's a bit of a thought that the Pacers are going to keep it competitive. I don't think JVT agrees with that. I have a bet on that series as well that I've already put in. We'll hit on that on the other side. Busy day ahead. By the way, just saw a glimpse of Churchill Downs. Woo, buddy, that is one muddy track. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
All right, I'm going to try to uplift our next guest. He seems down in the dumps. He's already worried. He's worked with humans way too long. He's got no hope for tonight. And he's also an Angels fan, and he had to witness whatever that was from their bullpen last night as Riley Green did something that's never been done before in the history of baseball. 2 homers in the 9th inning, 8 runs for the Tigers against his beloved Angels. JVT, how you doing, man? I feel like you're already anticipating the worst with your beloved Clippers tonight. Can I do anything to lift the spirits?
No, I mean, look, I don't really trust the Clippers. The Angels stink. So, yeah, there's really nothing. Looking forward to tonight to watch that and ultimately get angry. The only upside, silver lining of everything that has transpired is the fact that I have Riley Green on my fantasy team. So
at
least I got to benefit from that yesterday. But this team's been incredible. You even go back to the game prior to that where they were up 4-2 and they give up, I think, 5 runs in an inning or whatever it was. So this has been an absolute nightmare. Trout's back on the IL. Yeah, everything's going really poorly.
But you're still, that hat looks sharp. The Angels hat looks good. So You got that going for you. And you got money moves, you and Stormy, weekdays from noon to 2 as it has gotten rolling. So something that you discussed on Money Moves earlier this week, we talked about it a little bit when you joined us on Thursday night on Primetime, which is the zigzag. It did not come home, obviously, last night as the Houston Rockets were able to get the victory. But still, this has been a trend that has been very profitable so far in this postseason. I believe the number is now 21-11-1 ATS for teams that have lost the previous game. I'm curious because I know the way that you bet, and you like to kind of go against the popular trends. What do you make of this zigzag theory? Is this something sustainable? Is this a blip? What's your overall take on the profitability of the zigzag so far in the NBA postseason?
It's not profitable. It can't be, even though it has been so far. Go back to last night where, again, I was playing against the theory of the zigzag, but the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. I mean, that number, Tim, I got 5.5 with the Houston Rockets yesterday. That's an incredible number considering where you were at through the course of that series. And then they stay inside of that number, keep the Warriors at arm's length the entire time, essentially cover wire to wire. But that's a really inflated number. And those are the kind of numbers that you're betting into if you're just blindly betting the zigzag. So to me, no, it is not. At some point, it is going to start to dry up. And maybe we're starting to get to that point. For that number to swing from 4.5 in Houston to 5.5 in favor of Golden State back at home because they're at home in an elimination game and they lost the last one, it just doesn't make any sense. So I don't think over the long term that will be the case. So we'll see with this first round coming to an end with both Golden State, Houston, and LA, Denver wrapping up this weekend. Keep track of it round by round. But I do think that we're going to get to a point where this evens back out because some of the numbers get so inflated for these teams coming off of a loss just because they lost the previous contest. And it's got to be something where I think that it has to expire at some point.
Jonathan Von Tobel joining us here, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. Of course, you can catch him weekdays with Stormy on Money Moves. You can follow him on Twitter at @MeJVT. All right, looking at the total, and I want to get your perspective on tomorrow night as well, because we've seen the over take a bunch of money in Golden State, Houston this morning, going from 201 to 204. There's that initial tax, right? Once again, to your point about the zigzag, you're paying this tax on the expectation of a team bouncing back. Looking at the total here tonight, Game 6 was 213, Game 5 was 210. Now, Game 1, way back when, was 224.5. Here we sit at 206.5, 207. You're starting to see the market disagree and say, no, this has gone too far with that Game 7 under tax. What do you make of this total, and what do you make of the fact that the market clearly is saying you've set this number too low?
Yeah, I think it makes some sense when you're talking about it getting a little too low. You know, this has been a really slow series. It's been the second slowest series in terms of possessions per game, other than the first round series between Orlando and Boston. So this has been a very slow series. It has been a series in which you're not getting to the free throw line a ton because of the way these two teams operate on offense and the way their superstars operate. So it's not surprising that maybe you're going to get this buyback, only because these are offenses that have been operating at a pretty efficient level in the back end of the series, and maybe you're going to get that to happen. Like, the tempo is already there for these two teams. I don't think it gets much slower than that. And I think that both teams have really kind of shown that they get how to attack the other. I also think the adjustments that have been made, Nick Batum going out there for the Los Angeles Clippers, would expect that he starts here tonight in place of Chris Dunn. That's going to really up the ante in terms of the ability to score for the LA Clippers. They're a good three-point shooting team and, you know, a very tight number, slightly higher chance of overtime between these two. It's a 1.5-point spread. I think all of those factors, I would very much agree with the market going, you know what, like 204, 204.5, it's a little high, or should be a little low. Let's bump this thing up a little bit higher and get that to a more plausible number. And like you said, we are 17.5 points away from the first number that we saw in this series. At some point, that's a very, very big adjustment.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think that, you know, at one point in time, I think this was almost 19 points difference from Game 1. Yep. A Game 1, which, by the way, had overtime and still went under the total. Jonathan Von Tobel joining us here, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line, getting us ready for Clippers and Nuggets. So we've got a point spread of 1.5. Obviously, from an in-game standpoint, probably better to go that route because it feels like there will be swings certainly tonight there at Ball Arena. But is this number correct? Game 5 in Denver was Clippers -2. Now, I think some of that was predicated on the bounce-back thought process there. But what do you make of the number where we are? Game 1, I think, closed Denver -1, and here we are, Game 7 at -1.5 in favor of the Nuggets.
I think I get it. I don't trust the Clippers at all. And the Nuggets have actually been there and done that. And I think you understand why this number is where it is. But it's also worth pointing out here that the Denver Nuggets did have a 3-2 series lead last year, and they lost that thing. The Nuggets have actually lost multiple Game 7s in the Nikola Jokic era. They've played the most as well in the Nikola Jokic era here in the postseason. So I think that it's not unthinkable that the Los Angeles Clippers were able to come in here and win this game. But to your point, it is pretty interesting where every other game in Denver had, except for one, had the Clippers as the favorite. But now all of a sudden in an elimination game, we have to shift this the other way. I do think that there is inherent value in looking at the Los Angeles Clippers today. The question is just whether you trust them to actually pull it off. Look, we shouldn't be here at this point of the series, Tim. The series should be over. The Clippers blew 2 games in this series, and this is why you're playing an elimination game on the road. Now, Kawhi Leonard has done it before, too. The last series that he finished healthy with the Los Angeles Clippers, he led them back from a 3-2 series deficit against the Dallas Mavericks, won on the road in Game 6, and then went out and had home in Game 7 and got it done. So there's a little bit of history here. They have done it before, but I don't know if I really trust them given the way they played. Look at the end of the last game where they take the ball, they take the air out of the ball, and they almost blow that. If Russell Westbrook can hit a layup in transition, we're maybe talking about this series being over potentially. So I just don't trust this team. They have shown me nothing that makes me think they can step up to the moment. They have trailed in every single first quarter in this series at the end of it, except for I think one. They have gotten off the slow starts. They've been apathetic, and yet here they are. So maybe it's a testament to how good they are, but I don't know if I've seen anything that would make me trust them.
Jonathan Von Tobel, co-host of Money Moves, weekdays here on the network, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time. I do want to get a quick thought on tomorrow night, Game 7, but anything you are going to have in the account heading into tonight's game? I know pre-series, you and I both have a Clippers ticket. I think your ticket a little bit juicier than mine. Anything you're looking to add tonight as we head into this Game 7?
No, I was looking. I haven't seen it yet. But if you could find anything Chris Dunn related, if it's still hanging around at like 10.5 range for points, rebounds, and assists, I think that's worth playing under. Dunn has now been eliminated from the series. He got benched in the second half after playing 7 minutes and didn't go in to the rest of the game after Batum went in for him. I do think that there's something there, and it's kind of like a free space in bingo where if he gets into the game, or excuse me, if he doesn't get into the game, then of course he doesn't play any minutes, you get the money back. And if he does, I don't think it's going to be a big role. I don't think he fits here for this series. I think he fits a little bit better in the next series where they might need him against a more backcourt oriented team. So look out for some Chris Dunn's point, rebounds, and assists. I was trying to find that to play it again. I played it in the last game. I want to play it under again here if it's the right number.
All right, quick thought tomorrow. Obviously, we have 2 games tomorrow. We got Indiana-Cleveland series starting, but I do want to get your thoughts quickly on Game 7, Golden State and Houston. You know, be careful what you wish for, right? Golden State kind of conceded up 3-1 on the road at Houston. Then they lose again last night. You were on the Houston side. Rockets laying 3, and as I mentioned in the last segment, JVT, we've seen the over take some serious money this morning from 201 out to 204. So once again, the market's saying, it's probably gone a little too far.
Yeah, I think when you look at this too, I thought the number was cheap. I laid 2 yesterday on the side with the Houston Rockets to win this game. I think the number, again, when we're talking about in the last few home games, each team has been laying 4, and yet we open this up and it's 2. The Rockets have proven that they are the better team, I think, at this point. They just have more size. It has given the Warriors problems. The Warriors' offense has been atrocious. The spacing has been awful. They start Gary Payton yesterday, Tim, and that's another non-shooter that's not a threat. Completely clogs up the floor for Golden State. And the only other lever they have to pull is Jonathan Kuminga, who is also somebody who is not going to threaten you in terms of floor spacing. I think this series is a little cooked here for Golden State. Obviously, going into Game 7 on the road, it's a tough spot. I get playoff Jimmy. I get Steph Curry. But I think there's too many matchups that work in the Rockets' favor.
He's Jonathan Von Tobel. Follow him at MeJVT. It's going to be okay, JVT. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I can't wait.
The confidence is oozing out of Clipper fan Jonathan Von Tobel's pores.
Tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling. Man, we got to pick it up. We got to pick up the energy. I mean, I love my guy, JVT. I'm worried. We need to lift up his spirits. And I think we need to make a petition to the Nugget fans out there and just say, look, you had a championship a couple of years ago. He needs this, so let's let him have this one, and then we can worry about the Thunder. I'm gonna make some calls, and we'll see if we can make that happen. All right, let's pivot though. Speaking of Denver, not only will they have a Game 7 in their city tonight on the hardwood, they'll have a Game 7 to focus on down in Texas against the Dallas Stars. And help us break it down, our good friend Todd Furnman joins us right now, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. Todd, before we get to the Game 7 tonight, I'm going to ask you a very, very wise question as me, the hockey expert. What the hell is wrong with Connor Hellebuck?
It's a great question. But before we get into that, Tim, I haven't heard one of your guests that sad about his team since you going into the national championship as a Notre Dame fan. The JVT resigned to the fact that his Clippers are yet again going to let him down in a game of this magnitude. But as far as Connor Hellebuck is concerned, look, we know that goaltending is about as mental a position you're going to find in any sport. And for whatever reason, when Connor Hellebuck takes his game on the road in the NHL postseason, he has looked like a goalie performing at a well below average level. And I know we'll get into a little bit of a breakdown of Game 7 between the Blues and Jets. But if you look at a stat in hockey, there's one for goaltenders called goals saved above expected. So far this postseason, Connor Hellebuck is 25th out of 25 goalies, and he's given up nearly 10 goals more than what an average goalie would in those same spots. The only goalie within a stone's throw of him is Stuart Skinner, and that's at minus 4.5 goals saved above expected. So Hellebuck is fighting it, but we'll see if he can erase some of those demons with a Game 7 win against the Blues.
Yeah, that'll be tomorrow night in a Winnipeg. I believe the stat I heard last night on SportsCenter, is this the first Game 7 since like the 70s in Winnipeg, Todd?
Late 1977, I believe it was. They weren't even a member of the NHL at that point. I think it was the WHA, and they played a now-defunct hockey organization in all of that. So it puts things in perspective how long it has been for the folks in the Peg to have a home game in Game 7. So a lot at stake tomorrow for their beloved Jets.
1977. Todd Furnman joining us courtesy of our Progressive guest line. Colorado, Dallas tonight, and you've got a situation where the market is taking the Colorado Avalanche here. I'm looking at the board right now. DraftKings as high as minus $170. Circa, where I sit, minus 159. Superbook out to minus 164. Before we dive into the X's and O's of tonight, how would you describe this series? Because after Game 1, it was like, all right, this is what we expected. Colorado's the better team. They blasted Dallas, and now we've just seen this kind of this tug of war, so to speak. So, how would you put your finger on this series as we head into Game 7 tonight, Todd?
Dallas has been outplayed for extended stretches in this series, and I think a lot of us anticipated coming into this particular round that the Stars, shorthanded without Miro Heiskanen on their blue line and without Jason Robertson up front, just didn't have that high-end talent, some of that star power they were going to need to slow down the Colorado Avalanche. And if you really dig into some of the numbers, the one game where Dallas looked to be the superior team was Game 5 they played at home. They scored 9 seconds in on a fortuitous bounce from Wyatt Johnson and were able to play downhill. The one thing that we have seen so far in this series, though, that I think is pretty consistent is that when Colorado plays its A game, Dallas just doesn't have any answers. The challenge for the Avalanche will be, again tonight, if they don't have that A game, is their floor high enough to knock off a Stars team that has a decided edge in net with Jake Ottinger and has been in these kind of situations before where Peter DeBoer 8-0 in Game 7s with 4 different organizations and Nathan MacKinnon 0-3 in his career, never being able to push his team across the finish line in those kind of spots. Again, small sample sizes, but always fun to try and discuss who gets a bounce here and who gets a bounce there.
Todd Furnman joining us once again, courtesy of our Progressive guest line. Does work for CBS Sports HQ. Also the founder of the Bet the Board, co-founder. I don't want to get Payne Insider upset at me. Co-founder of the Bet the Board podcast, which we're all looking forward to another football season there of the Bet the Board pod. So, we were just talking about the tax that you have to pay in the NBA for Game 7 unders. Since 2019, unders on the hardwood in Game 7s are 14-5. Markets disagreeing, though, right? They're saying this number's gone too low. We're going to bet some overs here, whether it be Golden State, Houston moving 3 points this morning, a little bit of movement in the Clippers, Denver over, Todd. So I say all that to bring it to first period under. A jabroni like me even looks at first period unders like, well, things are going to tighten up in Game 7s. So how do you look at this number, 1.5 juiced under around minus 20? So we've seen some movement to the under here for this first period under.
So I make a slight case to go under. I don't think you're stealing anything. I'm not going to claim that there is a massive mathematical edge to trying to go under in the first period in this game. But I do think for the Dallas Stars, playing in their own building, they know they have to tighten things up defensively, minimize the ability of Colorado to get out and transition, and take advantage like they were able to do in Game 6, where you saw an Avs team put Jake Ottinger under duress for the better part of that second and third period. Players like Nathan MacKinnon, Marty Necas, even Gabriel Landeskog returning from injury. I mean, these are guys that want to try and turn it into a full 200-foot game compared to Dallas, who's a little bit thin on the blue line and knows they don't have some of those cogs. So I lean under 1.5 in the first period. I think minus 20 should be the cutoff. But you mentioned some of the tax that they force you to pay. I mean, look at Game 6. We saw that total in Denver, 6 over minus $1.25. Some books even going to 6.5 shaded to the under. We get 11 goals, and the books go, you know what? We're going to open this total 6 heavily juiced under and immediately get bet down to 5.5. So, again, odds makers, no dummy in this grand scheme of things. but I would feel a little bit more comfortable going under 1.5 in the first than going under full game, despite NHL Game 7 unders being on an 11-3 to the under run.
5.5 juiced under at some shops now, including the Westgate Superbook and DraftKings. So once again, paying that tax on the total. Todd Furnman helping us break it down. So first period under, a small play for you. Anything on the side here? I think you have a Colorado pre-series ticket in pocket. So are you letting that ride? Are you taking a little Dallas? How would you attack this side here with Dallas hosting Colorado tonight?
I'm surprised to see the amount of money this morning that we've seen come in on Colorado. I thought a true number on this was right around that minus $1.35, minus $1.40. You mentioned plus 149 out there at a very prominent book in our neck of the woods at Superbook. And I'm starting to get more and more intrigued with Dallas being able to create a little bit of arbitrage. Do I think Colorado wins this game more often than not? I do. But I can't get to where the market's sitting right now with the ability to take Dallas plus $1.50. But if folks want to have a little bit more skin in the game and upside, I wouldn't hesitate to take Dallas right around 15-1 to win the Cup at Caesars, because if the Stars do get through this series and they have a chance to get Miro Heiskanen and Jason Robertson back in the mix, you can make a legitimate case that they'll be a decided favorite if they were to play the St. Louis Blues and only a modest underdog against the Winnipeg Jets in the next round.
Nothing better than Game 7s on the ice. We get two of them. So Colorado, Dallas tonight, St. Louis, Winnipeg tomorrow. We alluded to it to start the segment with you, Connor Hellebuck and his struggles on the road. Fortunately for him, back in the friendly confines there in Winnipeg. They're a minus $1.48 favorite, and I was looking at the first period under price. I was curious what it was going to be. Minus 135. So once again, pretty hefty tax. Early thoughts on St. Louis, Winnipeg, Todd?
You know, this is a game I'm going to stay away from a total perspective. We have now seen the over cash in 5 out of 6 games. And why is that notable? You've been able to go over the total in this series at plus $1.20 roughly every game. So you've been able to profit quite handsomely. And while I do think the Jets are a little bit more buttoned up on the back end, we've seen a lot of low-event hockey translate into high-scoring affairs. Jordan Binnington has that pedigree in a game of this magnitude. I think if Winnipeg is going to be successful and come out of here with a home series victory, I think you have to look to the saves market. Not widely available right now, but I expect it to open for 60 minutes, right around that 21.5 mark. I just think the Jets have to do everything they can to insulate Connor Hellebuck in a game like this. So I'd be looking to go under 21.5 saves with Hellebuck, slightly in there, and to be willing to pay up to minus $1.30, minus $1.35 to do so.
All right, 30 seconds. My Caps got a shot against these Hurricanes?
They do have a shot, but a healthy Freddie Anderson spells disaster, and I think Carolina is built for this. But I do think Washington gets a split in the first 2 games, so I'd have no problem if you wanted to back them in Game 1 or Game 2, where they should be an underdog in both games.
Todd, always appreciate the insight, man. Enjoy it tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy the NBA, NHL, and, of course, the Derby later today.
Yes, indeedy. There he is, Todd Furnman, joining us courtesy of our progressive guest line, CBS Sports HQ, and the Bet the Board podcast. Speaking of the Derby, you know, Todd's a pro. He leads us right into things. Like, our Derby guide is out right now, and if you want to get your hands on it, well, guess what? We got a great promo running where you can get 14 months of VSiN Pro for $199. Normally, for a year, it's $240. It's now $199 when you sign up today. We'll throw in those extra 2 months. You get the Derby guide as well. So check it out, VSIN.com/subscribe. The promo code is PRO, P-R-O. You can lock in 14 months of VSiN Pro for just $199. VSIN.com/subscribe. We'll get you some best bets on the other side. We keep it rolling on a busy Saturday. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning. I'm your host, Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. Thanks to Todd Furnman and JVT joining us here in this hour. Coming up in hour number 3, more hockey talk. Steve Levy from ESPN will join us in the third hour of the program, and we'll also go behind the counter. Chuck Esposito from Stations Casino. He'll get some thoughts on the Derby and also what he's seeing from an action standpoint in Game 7s. 2 Game 7s, right? Game 7 on the ice, Game 7 on the hardwood. I guess I'll say, a little bit of a thank you. I mean, the sweat is real. I would have preferred the Clippers to have wrapped this thing up by now, but I guess they couldn't have done so in Game 6. So we were close there in that fourth quarter to being without hoops tonight. That would have been a bit odd, but instead we got it, and we get another Game 7, which I think people were. I think the general consensus was a bit surprised to see what we saw last night with the Houston Rockets taking care of business and getting that victory, not only covering the point spread, but also getting the victory against the Golden State Warriors. But Fred VanVleet was phenomenal. We played you the Draymond clip earlier in the show. Not surprised, at least from Draymond's perspective, to see how well Fred VanVleet has been playing in this series. And the three-pointer has come alive. 6 of 9 last night for Fred VanVleet in that victory for the Houston Rockets. Steven Adams has been playing exceptionally well for the Houston Rockets. And now, as JVT pointed out, he laid an early 2. Market has moved up to 3. Does it feel like the Golden State Warriors, a team who was a significant series favorite and led this series 3-1, are they in a little bit of trouble? We'll get more perspective on that game certainly tomorrow as we'll preview that one with an 8:30 tip time on Sunday. 2 games tomorrow, Indiana-Cleveland, Golden State-Houston, Indiana-Cleveland, of course, being Game 1. And then New York and Boston, that series will start on Tuesday. But Clippers-Denver is tonight. And also on the ice, we've got Colorado Avalanche taking on the Dallas Stars, which leads us into best bets. And we'll get to our best bets here in just one moment. But I want to circle back to a clip we played earlier in the show from Jared Bednar, the head coach of the Colorado Avalanche. And Todd Furnman just mentioned it. Pete DeBoer, 8-0 all-time in Game 7s. The head coach of the Dallas Stars. Of course, he's been at a handful of other stops. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the show with Andy Lindahl about just how it seems like DeBoer has Bednar's number. You look at this series between the Stars and the Avs. This will be the 4th time that the Avs and Stars have played in a Game 7. The Stars, 3-0. But the market says, I hear you on all of that, and I disagree. They're taking the Colorado Avalanche as right now they're as high as a minus $1.70 favorite. And if you're looking to back the Stars, the Westgate Superbook here in Vegas, plus 149. Looks like a couple other shops around the country in that north of plus 140 range. Here at Circa at plus 143. Jared Bednar, once again, he is the head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, and he's not expecting any surprises tonight as they take the ice at the American Airlines Center.
But you're playing a team for the 7th time in less than 2 weeks. Like, you're a lot of the time you're just reiterating things that you've already talked about, things that you have to be better at, like in every aspect of the game, and it still comes down to that compete level, the passion you play with, the speed you're playing with, like winning races, battles, and then executing under all circumstances.
All right. Once again, we've talked a lot about the totals in the NBA and that Game 7 tax. Since 2019, unders 14-5 in Game 7s. That's going to be peppered all across, social media, television, etc. And that's why you're seeing the tax. But the market's saying, I hear you, but we're paying too much. And that's why you're seeing the pushback here on the over. As for the total here, Todd pointed this out, right? We saw just 2 nights ago a Game 6 in which the total was 6.5, right? And the number hit 11. I mean, I was watching that game with Scott Seidenberg here on primetime. I'm like, hey, Scott, do we go in-game? Do we take in-game under? He's like, no, I don't think so. And thankfully we didn't, right? We saw a bounty of goals, a couple empty netters, and the thing lands on 11. And now it's 5.5 juiced under at some spots. So I'm not going to mess with the full game total, especially when you think about the shenanigans that we could ultimately get from the thought process of empty netters. If this is, 3-2, do we see a pulled goalie situation? More than likely, right? How long will that situation be? But Andy Lindahl and Todd Furnman both have kind of convinced me to go in this particular direction. So we're going to go first period under. Look around, see what the price is. Once again, yesterday, I think FanDuel had it at minus 110, minus 115. Todd said that the furthest he would go is minus $1.20. That's available out there, so look around, see if you get a little bit cheaper. But we'll see if this thing is close to the vest. So I'll echo what Todd says, or if you want to flip it on its head, say, I'll just tail Todd because he's the smart guy. But yes, that'll be a best bet here. We'll go first period under tonight. Hopefully Colorado and Dallas, for my purposes, hopefully Colorado gets a 1-0 lead, and this is a rocking chair type of situation with my Colorado, not one, but 2 bets on the Avs to win this series. Looking back to what we discussed last week here on the show, the Avs were around plus 125 in series, down 2-1. Remember, game 4, they went off as a $1.85 favorite, and they won 4-0. And that was last Saturday when we talked about the adjusted series price being at a plus 125. So I kind of need the Avs to win tonight. I could certainly take some stars on the other side just to kind of get off things at the price that is out there. But I'll go first period under here. In this spot. And that's the joys of hosting a show solo, is when you get a little crick in the throat here. So we're going to go first period under in this one, and that's the way we will roll. Also, we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but another best bet for me, and I talked about this earlier the week on Primetime, is the old double result. And I think from the standpoint of Pacers and Cavaliers, you have a very expensive series price, and I think the Cavaliers should take care of business in this series. Do I think that the Pacers are pesky? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But when I think back to, Game 6 and the game winner from Ty Halliburton, Game 5, I beg your pardon, the game winner from Ty Halliburton, I mean, that's a 7-point comeback with 40 seconds to go against a Bucks team that we know is severely flawed, right? So that was something that I looked at. I laid a $1.85 on the double result. DraftKings has it available. Game 1 win for the Cleveland Cavaliers, series win for the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. Best Bets is always brought to you by our friends over at G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN. G-Bank is upping the ante, folks, up to a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. First, new customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from account opening receive a $250 bonus. In addition, if you spend $50,000 on gaming and sports app loads within 30 days of account opening, you'll receive another $500 bonus. That's potentially a $750 bonus. Apply now, VSiN.com. That's VSIN.com/GBank. VSIN.com/GBank. Subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions do apply. So for me tonight, we're going first period under in Avs and Stars. Fortunately, I was able to get a little bit of a cheaper price yesterday, and Todd said minus 20, probably the furthest you want to lay when it comes to this particular bet. As for tonight on the hardwood, we talked to JVT earlier in the hour. One thing that he was looking to potentially attack here was Chris Dunn and the PRA under. And you do wonder, Game 7s, right? We saw it obviously with the Lakers, who have no depth. Do you look at a situation where the particular rotations are tightened up? So looking at some possible, Chris Dunn fades here is the way that JVT was looking to bet this particular game. I know he's got a pre-series position on his Los Angeles Clippers, so hopefully that is able to come home as well. But the one thing he was looking for was Chris Dunn, which make sure you look around and see if you're able to find a Chris Dunn fade option out there. So there you go. Oh, also, we're going to play you it, but sovereignty and journalism, 8 and 18 from Drew Dinsick. He said you got to have them on top of your card. More Kentucky Derby thoughts on the other side of the break. Also in hour 3, Steve Levy from ESPN, and we go behind the counter with Chuck Esposito. Busy day today, folks. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.